Got something a little bit different for you today, gang. Hope you enjoy it.
I'm going to pick a fight.
I don't perceive leatherworking as art. Oh, here comes the scrap. Bear with me on this one. It's my perception. This came out of a conversation with somebody who I was telling, I have all these multiple jobs that I do and rotate from one workbench to the next. And she said, "So, well, that's good. You have this art that you do for creative expression or whatever." And I said, it's not. It's labor. It's not art. The work that I do, there are leather workers out there who do create art right out of the gate, and I don't deny that their work is beautiful. Some of those people that do, carvings and do painting of their art, of their leather work, even like some of the armor and stuff that I've seen created, it's magical. They make it look like they turn leather into metal, and that's impressive. And I think that is artwork. But what I do, sheaths and holsters and wet forming around objects and even some of the purses, it's just logistics. It's steps 1 through 75. It's not art. It's analytical. It's engineering more than it is anything else. The lines and the angles have to follow the the object that I'm working around. So the creativity piece of that is negligible. Now, I'm not saying that leatherworking as a craft doesn't have some amazing merits. It sure does. There are some great advantages to doing the job, but it is at its heart work. So let me tell you a little bit about the positives. If you've never done this or you've considered doing it but you're not quite there yet, here's the best I can do to sell you on this job. You get to experience problem-solving exercises that you would not get to experience otherwise. And I know that sounds kind of bad, like who wants to live through pain and trying to work around things and come up with crazy solutions to intricate problems. But there's a sense of satisfaction in doing that, in working around or through something that you thought was just an insurmountable problem, an angle that didn't want to jive, or I have to pound a rivet in a weird place. It leads to some very interesting solutions that can be wildly entertaining. And the other part that goes along with problem solving is failure. I've failed so many times to varying degrees. And in some cases, I missed a stitch. Oopsie doodle. Either if it's not in a place that's prominent, I'll ignore it. If it is, I might, cut a whole new thread and run a line of 5 or 6 just to cover over the one piece that I missed, and get that fixed. If it's, a rivet that didn't set right, it's a failure, sure, but there's ways around it. You're either going to pry it off, or you're going to drill it out, or snip it with, side cutters, or do whatever, and then reset it again, and everything's hunky-dory. Sometimes I've put stuff in the wrong place. I'll have a plan in my head, and it just doesn't match what's on the bench in front of me. And I'll poke a hole in the wrong spot, and then I find out, oh, that's not where that strap is going to hang. And so now I have this big gaping hole in the middle of my workpiece that I have to hide somehow. And in some cases, I have taken, those little divots. I gotta find out what word those called. Scabs, tabs, I don't know. But the little pieces that wind up all over your shop after you punch a hole. I've taken one of those, set it back in place, and glued it in. And you might have to rotate it around because, believe it or not, leather, very much like wood, has a grain, and it has to be matched. But there's an example of something I just refilled the hole, dyed over it, and it was barely noticeable at the end of the day. Or I put a decorative ribbon into it and accentuated my horrible mistake. There have been times when I've scrapped an entire piece. And when I design the work, I try and do the most complicated things first. Like I don't want to cut the piece out and shape it and edge it and skive it and dye it and do all the things and then wind up pooching it on the laser at the very last step. Or you know if there's something that I can do right up front that I know there's a huge margin for error, I'd rather get that mistake made first before I put a lot of work into the piece. So if I do entirely wreck it, I can just, I mean, it sucks throwing a piece of leather in the bin, but better than a piece of leather that you already worked 10 hours on to find out that you made a mistake. The small victories in overcoming those obstacles, it's it's wonderful to celebrate every time we do something right. We live in a world that was designed to crush us. We're supposed to be murdered by nature and ruined by relationships. It's just the nature of this broken world we live in. And so here's your opportunity to get a little win and another little win and another little win. And oh my God, I put that stitch in exactly the right place. And I punched this line exactly straight. And I made that cut on that curve just absolutely as beautiful as it could be. Small win, small win, small win. And that's really great for building confidence and not only in your art and your talent, but also, I use the word art, that tricky, but also just applied generally to your personality. You carry that confidence with you, those small wins everywhere you go. There's a, I don't want to steal Micro's thunder. This is really his gig, but it's the practice of a mastery. I'm no leatherworking expert, but if I continue to do the little things day after day after day after day after day, I will eventually look up and say, holy crap, I'm better than 80% of the world. And that wasn't the goal. It wasn't an ambition. It's just what happens when you do something repetitively and you come up with the workarounds and the shortcuts and learn how to hide your mistakes, and you inadvertently become the expert in the room. And so I kind of dig it. Marahi Yesheba, the Aikido guy, said, practice it all day long, every day, and then maybe in 20 years you'll get the first teaching right. Maybe. That's kind of how I feel about this. Every time I make a cut, I get a little jittery, little sketchy, because there's an opportunity that no matter how many times I've made that cut, this could be the time that my finger slips, and there goes a wonky angle or a ruined piece. So I love the idea of working toward that mastery. At the end of the day, we can talk about finances just for laughs, but quite frankly, the market segment that I have niched myself into doesn't make money. It kind of does, but it's not scalable. I can't go out there and turn around and become a multimillionaire based off of what I do the way I do it right now. I did not pick easily repeatable products that I could put on Etsy to sell for $5 time and time and time and time and time again. I mean, I could, I guess, but then, somebody else on Etsy is going to have it for $4, and you're just working down to the lowest bid. And I don't think that that's any way to do work. The other alternative is I could cater to high-end clientele, and I could make $300 on every piece that I pushed out the door. But those people are exacting. They're paying a lot of money and they expect a lot for what they're paying for. And I'm not saying I do shoddy work, but if I skip the 3 intricate details, the piece of piping, or that additional brass thing that they wanted, or this clasp that was only available, from Bali, I, by not doing those pieces, I'm able to get stuff pushed out the door with very little stress. And and I like that. I like this. I want this to be kind of a relaxing exercise, despite the fact of, I said, problem solving and mistakes and mastery. And I don't want to have to kowtow to a very picky clientele. It's not my thing. As far as I'm concerned, the money that I would make from doing that is not worth the stress that I would put myself through trying to achieve their desired results. So, yeah, so my niche are people that they want something handmade that's not going to fall apart in 2 weeks like every other thing they buy off the shelf. But they're shopping at Walmart. They're not going to, Macy's on the average. They stay out of Dillard's and they're going to go to, well, they would have gone to JCPenney if they hadn't closed. But anyway, so that's my middle of the road mid-tier market, and all of the things. I made a commitment to handcraft everything. I do all hand stitching. I do have the machine that I use for some real light weights of leather. But honestly, after I've experimented with it, I don't like the way machines stitch. Even if I had a professional, the $7,000 Cobra, whatever. I, it's just the way that it does. If you pop a stitch, then you lose the whole line. The whole assembly falls apart. With the saddle stitching, I pop one stitch. Yeah, that's okay. Just light it on fire with a Bic lighter, and then smooth it out, and off you go. No problems. And so I really like the durability that comes with hand stitching over a machine. But that's my market. And I have done enough with that to fill in when we were short on bills, or to buy a vacuum cleaner, or, Christmas gifts for three or four family members. I'm not becoming rich off of it, but it's a slightly more than a self-sustaining hobby. And I'm okay with that. It's fine. If that's not your goal, if that's not your dream, then maybe you should look at those high-end clients and getting precise down, or invest the money in the machine, or sell stuff on Etsy by the gross. But I'm just not there. There is a payoff, though, aside from just the money part of this. I hope, I'm not going to mention her name, and I hope if she ever sees this, she doesn't feel embarrassed, but a lady hit me up, and she wanted a bag that, it was the kind of thing that was pretty common around the 70s, and her dad made her one. And it was stolen from her at some point in her life. But she loved it, and her dad made it for her. And so she said, Can you replicate this? Can you make another one, the way my dad made it?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, no problem. He did what I do now. Nothing has changed in that technology in the last, 50 years. So I finished the thing, and I put in all the details per the spec, and I looked at it, and I said, I hope this flies, because I don't know. I'm not the judge. The customer is the judge. That's the end result. I don't know if I've made something that's up to standards. I know it's not up to my standards. I see all the failings and all the mistakes that I made, but I don't look at it overall and say, that is the most beautiful piece I've ever seen. So, on some random Saturday, I took a drive over to Pennsylvania, and I dropped this thing off. And when she saw it, her eyes got big. And when she took it into her hands, she sniffed it and got that whiff of fresh leather in her nostrils. And then she hugged it. Gang, there is no better payoff than that. I had a friend he happens to be a priest, but he asked me a while ago. He said, "You seem down. What is it that brings you joy?" And I couldn't answer the question. I mean, there are some obvious family things that bring me joy. When my little girl gets off the school bus and comes running at me, with her arms waving over her head, yelling, "Dada!" That brings me joy. But, then it's over and we're moving on. When I see a dog hanging its head out a car window, just living its best life, that moment brings me joy. But they're fleeting. So I shouldn't say they bring me joy. They bring me happiness. But when I saw her hug something that I had made just for her and for nobody else, her eyes were welling up, because I was part of a memory. I was part of a history. I got to be included in that story with her father in some small way. And that, my friends, brought me joy. Every time I've thought about that since I made that drop off, it brings back that feeling in my chest, that happiness, that pride, that involvement, that connection with humanity. So there is art. It's not my perception that matters. It's the receiver who matters, and they're the ones that say, "You make art." All right, y'all. It was a pleasure hanging out with you. I'm going to do some more leather bench philosophy, just because I got a lot of things to say that I need to get out of my system before I kick the bucket. So if you're all in for it, hang around. I'll be here. And if not, that's okay. I do have some other videos planned and some other making ofs, so stick around for that too. Hey, please tell a friend about me. I'm begging and pleading. I'm at 884, I think. And thank you, all of you, for subscribing. That was absolutely wonderful of you. I appreciate the follows. But I need to break $1,000. I need to do that for the YouTube algorithm and their money-making machine to kick in, because I would love to make 38 cents off of, I don't know, some ad read that I did for some product that I didn't believe in. That's not true. I wouldn't do that. But it opens up some possibilities for me that I don't have currently, and that would be helpful. So if you could do that for me, I would be very, very grateful. I don't have anything cool for a giveaway, but I definitely have to schedule one. I think you all deserve that. I'll have to come up with something interesting. Maybe I'll create something and pawn it off. Although the leather templates went very well. I might have an idea. We'll see. Anyway, thanks for joining, and I hope you come back and hang out with me for the next one. All right, everybody. Love you to pieces, and I will talk to you soon.